The unemployment rate in India is more than just a statistic that the government uses to formulate policy. Especially closer to election time, it often becomes a political issue. It becomes either a way to say that the government of the day is doing a great job or to hammer down the government of the day saying unemployment is high, which is why the interesting conversation that we've lined up for you today. In the last couple of weeks, two very divergent pictures have emerged of the Indian unemployment picture. One, of course, from a private agency called CMIE that says that unemployment in the month of October has increased to a high of 10%. That's the highest in 2 years. And then you have the annual data point that the government of India puts out. That's called the Periodic Labor Force Survey, which says that unemployment has come down to 3.2%. That's an annual data point, the lowest in at least 5 years. Now, the interpretation of these data points has also been an interesting endeavor. SBI has come out with a report on this, and they make the point that perhaps the way we gauge unemployment needs to change. To speak more on this, I'm joined now by the Group Chief Economist of SBI, Dr. S.K. Ghosh. Soumya Kanti Ghosh, great speaking with you here on BQ Prime. Thank you for joining us. And let me begin with one contention that you place in your report, where you say that the way we track self-employed in India needs to change and the entire gauge of unemployment needs to change. Why are you saying that?
Yes. Thank you, Tamanna. I think there are a couple of issues which you put forward in the report, but let me start with the self-employment, as you just mentioned. See, the issue of self-employment in India is that Indian labor markets, if you look from the data from 1980s, when we used to have the old unemployment survey, down to 2009-10, after that it was discontinued, the PLFS survey. I think the first point to note in that Indian labor market, more than the share of self-employment has always been more than 50%. So whether it is 52%, 54%, 56%, that's a matter of debate, but it has always been more than 50%. So the case that it has suddenly become more than 50% in the last couple of years is factually not correct. The second point is that within the self-employed part, the most important part which as an economist or data person looks into is the person who are actually not getting remuneration. So basically that you call the unpaid laborers, or they are basically most of the family employees. So here the share has also gone up in the last 2 to 3 years, specifically after the pandemic. I think now around 17% is self-employed. But the important point to note is that this ratio of self-employment also has been always on the larger side, more than 10% if you look into the history of the last 40 years. But perhaps what is now happening is that there is also a lot of contention that an increase in these unpaid workers within the self-employed part means that since they are not getting remuneration, that's a matter of employment distress in the Indian context because they are not getting any job. But I think there is possibly a misconception over there. If you look into the way the credit is getting formalized nowadays at the bottom of the pyramid, and this PLFS and the report PLFS actually shows that Indian labor market, I think close to 40% is now informal. But the way the labor market is getting formalized, the way are people taking loans and credit at the bottom of the pyramid from the banking system, I think what has happened is that a large part of those at the bottom of the pyramid, the organized sector, are getting loan from the formal institutions, and that's why they are getting integrated, and therefore these are actually the family members who are actually working to make their own business more rewarding. Okay. And please note also that, and just finally one important point is that please also note that there is also a lot of government offers nowadays in terms of food, in terms of shelter, clothing. The state governments are also using them. So I think these people now have a choice to how to work and where to work, rather than depending on others of when to get and work.
Okay, so now that is exactly what I want to come to. It's a bit about interpretation, and it gets a bit tricky. your contention is that less people are looking for formal jobs because credit is more easily available, their basic needs are taken care of with government ration distribution schemes, so they can work in their family enterprises which don't necessarily pay them, doesn't mean that they're unemployed. You also make the point that the family enterprise is getting bigger and it's seen through increase in household helpers. How do you justify, though? Is this really a choice that they're not seeking employment? Is just basic needs being covered by government food schemes going to be the barometer to move to family enterprises? Can you back these up with any data points, or is this a contention right now?
No, I think, Tamanna, it is now, and there are some data points, obviously, that justifies it, because if you look into the formalization of the credit in the last, I think, last even half a decade, that number has been significantly larger. And I think we had also put out a report in the last, I think, I don't remember, maybe a fortnight or a month back, where we have said that the formalization of the assets and liabilities of the banking system, I think 40% was the account number and 10% I think was the credit amount that has got formalized in the last 10 years. So yes, there are numbers to back them, and there are many government programs which the government is running. There is always an overlap between them. For example, I'll give an example. The people who have taken the Jan Dhan loans, a large part of that people are also taking the Mudra loans, and people who are now taking the Swanidhi loans, a large part of those people also will get the Mudra loans in the future. So basically, when there is an overlap across several schemes, that means that the government has a ready-made database. This could be a future area of research also, that how much of these people is getting into this formalization. But the results show, and in a separate study, we had shown some time back that the large part of the Prime Minister Swanidhi scheme, the people who are getting credit, and a large part of them are actually also was the PMJDY account holders. So you give deposits to the unorganized sector, they use these deposits, come to the banking system, build up a good credit history, and a part of that then be integrated into the banking system through formalization of credit. So I think this is a process which has been continuing.
Okay.
And just one small clarification we want to make. I have not said that people are not looking for formal labor. I am only saying that looking into the data and calling out this data as a form of labor market distress may not be factually correct.
Okay, so if you don't have a job but you're working in your family enterprise, need not mean you don't want a job, nor does it mean you're in distress. Just breaking it down very simply. Let me talk about the question of household helpers. Now, the data that is available shows that the number of household helpers has grown. And this again is a bit of gray area when it comes to interpretation. Does this point towards the improvement of the quality of employment available in India or not? What is your take on this?
See, I think, Tamanna, here I have a little bit different take. I think the issue, and we have said in the past also, the issue of the labor markets in India, apart from, of course, job in any developing country is always an issue, and India also is an issue. So I am not denying that. But the important point to India is today is that we may not be creating enough quality jobs which pays you well. That's why when you look into basically this EPFO data, that also shows that a large part of this formalization of jobs is happening. But EPFO jobs are mostly jobs which pays you around 15 to 20,000 per month. So that's not a very high paying job. So the point India need to do today is that they need to create and integrate. That's just the way that we are trying to do it right now. Get integrated into the value chain, which China has actually now vacated after a long time. And that helps to help India to move up the manufacturing value chain at the end of the day, because that is where you can produce some good quality jobs, apart from the service sector, where the jobs also need to be adequately paid. So I think that is where we should need the focus on, instead of saying that India is facing a huge labor market problem.
Okay, so you're saying quality of employment should be the focus rather than just the numbers. But I want to come to the numbers on one important segment, which is 15 to 29 years. This is where you look at youth unemployment. And this figure is high in the Indian context at about 10%. You say that this is not the way to look at it. This has become just a statistical exercise because people are staying in formal education longer and hence they are entering the job market later. In fact, you say the right way to look at it is post-30. Now, in a practical sense, Mr. Ghosh, don't people in India start working much earlier? If they are still in college or in higher education, should you not count them as unemployed till they get the job that they want?
Let me answer you with that, with the fact. Even if I take your word that they actually start working before 30. So, but how do you account for the fact that 15 to 29, the unemployment rate is 10%, and when you take from 15 to 59, forget about 30 plus what I have done, that unemployment dropped to 3.4%. So there must be something the way this is being calculated. And my only point to note over here is that, do you know the PLFS survey also, that also I have not noted in the report, there is the way the questions are asked. If you ask a person in India that, are you employed or not, are you earning an income, he will always say yes. But if you ask him, are you employed, he may say no. So how does these two basically map each other? So, but without getting into such, my point is that just in terms of simple statistics, 41 million students are enrolled today in different universities, colleges across India. And that basically should not come in the denominator. So what it is happening is that if that is coming in, if that number is taken into consideration, that number has been adjusted, then the unemployment obviously should be much lower than 10% than what we are seeing today. It is factually not possible to have a 10% youth unemployment rate and an overall unemployment rate of 3.2%. The two figures doesn't match, because the person who is getting unemployed at a young age, it means that no people are getting employed at a young age, only people in the older age are getting employed. So therefore, we have an unemployment rate of 3.2%. Just in plain common sense also, this doesn't make any sense. So my simple sense is that 15 to 29, yes, look into this, but also take education as an important factor in adjusting this youth unemployment, because our sense is that this is...
In that case, how do you justify or how do you explain that for women, it's different? Women between 15 to 29, the LPFR has increased from 16% to 24%. So either women are not going in for higher education, they're getting employed earlier. Is that what is happening? Or how do you account for that anomaly?
See, women are also getting employed, but I think 16% to 24% is not a huge jump. Women labor force participation rate in India has been always on the lower side. It has increased in the last couple of years. That's why I think in one of the recommendations we have said that you must reserve 33% of these banking correspondent jobs for the women, because they are the best person to explain the family in terms of taking care of their own finances. So 16 to 24% is a jump. It has jumped across all states, but overall context, I think the point to note is that 16, gone are the days when people at the age of 17 used to look for jobs. Today, people at the age of around 22, 23 or 24 are specifically primarily people looking for jobs. And if you take that factor into consideration, there is an incongruence between the labor force in the denominator and the people who are looking for jobs. Whenever you have these two labor force and people who are looking for jobs are different, as I have said in the report, the unemployment number may always be on the higher side. And that is exactly what has been happening in the Indian context.
But you're saying women increasing their participation in the labor force is also social issues or other issues, not just them going in for higher education or lesser of them going in for higher education.
No, women that is also because women today are also studying. If you look into this ratio of the male and female enrollment of the 41 million, you will also find a large proportion of women are also studying today.
Okay.
And so that's also a continuous process. But limited point is that the women's labor force participation rate in India needs to also go up to at least to the levels whereby they, if not equivalent to the men, at least nearer to the levels of what the men today have.
I mean, our aim should be and our target is 50%. But, I want to wrap this up with actually the big question. We've gone through the statistics, the details of your report, the back and forth on methods of calculation. At the end of the day, the unemployment figure, as I said in my opening remarks, is also a policy issue. It's a political issue, and it will be utilized, and the figure that will be picked will depend on what the target is or what the message is that you want to send across. In real terms, forget about all of that. If I ask you, does India today have an unemployment problem? Are our youth getting the jobs they deserve once they go through their studies and have qualifications? What would your answer be?
See, if you ask me, I would answer the second question first. In terms of qualification, it is possible that you may be overqualified in terms of getting a job. So basically, that's the question of we are not producing enough high quality jobs. The second point is that India needs an employment policy which should cater to India not only as a homogeneous country, but also in terms of the different regions. Let me give you an example. The North, basically Bihar and UP, these states are accounting for more than 40% of the overall people who may be looking for a job. But when you move down the South is a region where many people are very elderly. South states are more prosperous. So if you have to set up manufacturing units today, or these special economic zones, which should be, this should be set up in the northern states that caters to the people of this, say, Bihar, UP and other states. Remember, if you look into an amazing fact is that if you look into the income tax data today, you will find that a large part of the people from the West Bengal and other states are also filing returns, because the PAN card data captures your residence data, not from where you are working. So a larger part means that you have actually migrated from the state where you are working.
All right, it's complicated. Employment in India is complicated. It's not cut and dry. There is a lot of self-employment. There is also a lot of migratory employment. There is a lot of gig employment. But yes, the creation of quality jobs always has been and continues to remain a goal that we should aspire for. Thank you so much, Soumya Kanti Ghosh, for your time today and for taking all of our questions.
Thank you.